I wanted to ask you about the one which is about friendship. And I think you say at one point of time, you say, I think there is one which says that, you never argue with a friend, right? Or you lose, you never argue with our friends because between friends there shouldn't be anything to argue about. I would argue about...
That was not me, that was Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph.
But there is one that I have, I think, about a more important... It's less important to win an argument
than
to lose a friend. And that is something which I've learned in my own years at the UN and elsewhere.
Yeah.
In fact, it was a criticism that I've heard of some Indian diplomats, that they're brilliant, but they're not, they don't win people over.
Yeah.
They win arguments, and they don't do enough to win people over. And I thought that was an important lesson we should learn.
So what has been your more important lesson? I think the argument about friends doesn't hold true because at this point of time it's so polarized. You possibly, the only way to, there is lots of arguments with friends. I think that there's no way that you hold on friendship only because of what you
can argue and still be friends.
Yeah. I think that's disappearing. I think that everybody...
But in our country, depending on the subject, if you argue about politics or religion, friendships have ended on this.
Yeah. I think that you can't. I don't think you can talk about politics or religion even with your family. I think that everybody's on both sides this thing. And I have friends who are in America who the mother's Republican and the daughter's Democrat, and they have not spoken. So it's very much the same. I think dinner table conversations are difficult now.
That is getting more and more around the world. And I've seen it in India in our parliament, which used to be much more collegial and comradely. Very much fewer examples of people socializing across party lines, other than maybe a coffee in the central hall. And the central hall has now ceased to exist. I don't know how that's going to be.
Yeah. What is your impression of the new parliament? You've been there for a while.
Well, it's too early to say, but what I've seen of it is rather like a large cavernous convention center. It doesn't have a soul. Maybe we have to give it that soul through our occupation of it and our making it familiar. But right now it's unfamiliar to all of us.
Yeah. I think you also have that at the end, right, where you say that who wrote the Constitution of India, which is we the people of India. And I think it's possibly we the people of India that's going to have to give back the new, give the new parliament a soul.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, because so what is your favorite thing that you've lived up to, apart from the coffee?
Let me steal the book back from you for a second.
I have lots of pages marked out.
That's all right. Maybe you marked some of my favorites too. Well, this is certainly something I've always believed since my school days. The only good reason to be on this planet is to make a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah.
As a young kid, I kept asking myself, why are we here? You're born, you're going to die anyway. And then I realized, while you're here, it's got to matter. It's got to have meaning. And you've got to be able to affect the lives.
I know you have that poster where you say that India mattered to you and I have to matter to India, right?
I wanted to matter to India, and I hope in my small way I've sort of managed to do that. But it's still difficult in a vast country like this to ever feel you matter enough.
Yeah. Well, I think.
Yeah, it is better to lose an argument than to lose a friend, is me. And that's something that I really believe. But there should be nothing to argue about, is Joseph, and then you have to ask him.
No, because I think there is plenty to argue about, and I think that most of us have now just sort of kept our arguments out of friendship because it's just...
Another one that you have marked is some foolishly seek to revenge themselves upon history. But they do not understand that history is its own.
Yeah.
Today, you want to revenge yourself on the misdeeds of the Mughals. The Mughals are long gone. History has had its revenge on them.
Yeah.
Another one you marked. In India, we celebrate the commonality of major differences. We are a land of belonging rather than of blood. It's part of a larger speech I made, in which I talk about how the Freudians had this notion of the narcissism of minor differences. And this came into public and political consciousness during the Yugoslav Civil War. Because these are all people descended from the same Slavic races that settled the Balkan Peninsula in the 7th to 10th centuries AD. But they had different history shaping them. So some became Catholic, some became Muslim, some became Serb Orthodox, some were ruled as part of the Ottoman Empire, some were ruled as part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. All of these things are shaped. Serbo-Croatian was essentially one language like Hindustani, written now in different scripts and with an increasing emphasis on adding new words to make them different from each other. Now, when I look at all of this, Yugoslavia was supposed to be the classic example of the narcissism of minor difference. Whereas look at us. We have such vast differences. Everything, language, color of skin, sort of features, our geographies, our cuisines, our clothes, our cultures, what we celebrate. And yet we have the shared sense of belonging, and that belonging is sustained by the Constitution. The freedom struggle that produced that Constitution embodied certain values we can all subscribe to and in which all of us are equal. That was the great strength of it. So I wanted to make that point. And I have to say that that it's something which I believe very, very, very fundamentally. Or belonging rather than a blood, meaning that many nationalisms are all about ethnicity, right? The old European notion of nationalism was one of blood. Ours is one of belonging. So I've encapsulated a perhaps more elaborate idea in one sentence. But when I talk about it, I can explain it in greater detail. But I hope that one sentence gives a nugget or whatever.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah, Kofi Annan. The problem is never with the faith, but with the faithful. I think it's every religion claims to be about peace and coexistence and brotherhood and so on, and yet some end up butchering each other. So how do you butcher other people in the name of peace and coexistence? But they do. So as Kofi says, it's not the faith, it's the faithful. Hindu fundamental is a contradiction in terms, since Hinduism is a religion without fundamentals. That's something I've written about, of course, in my book, Why I'm a Hindu, in some detail, because the kind of fundamentals other faiths have. Let's say, I'm the only way to heaven, which is a Christian belief and an Islamic belief. Hinduism doesn't have that. That there is only some prescribed things you can do. There is a vengeful God who will punish you for wrong things, etc. All of these things, which are fundamentals of there is a sacred book, and only this book cannot be touched. If you touch it or misuse it, then you've completely committed a sin and can be executed for it. This kind of fundamentals doesn't exist in Hindu.
I think
we have no one sacred book but many. We have no one pope. We have no one Sunday. We are an eclectic faith with multiple modes of worship. You can choose to fast to Shivji on Monday. Somebody else might prefer Ganeshji on Wednesday. There's no Sunday for us. Every day is like that. And then similarly, you may revere a particular guru or a Shankaracharya or a Swamiji, and somebody may revere someone else, and both of you are Hindu. So that lack of fundamentals is definitional for Hinduism.
I think you have that point where you talk about Hinduism and you say that there is, it's also lived Hinduism, right? It's a way of life. Way of life is what I've said, but essentially it's a lived experience, I think, is what you've written.
And this is something else that I think applies in the world of Indian politics. The brave speak up for what they believe in. Cowards believe what they're told to speak up for.
So you're going to possibly hand this out to everybody in Parliament?
I don't think I can afford to. Publishers are never that generous. So they give me my limited number of free copies, which my family promptly snaffles up. And thereafter I'm dependent on their generosity. But I think fortunately, even our parliamentarians can afford this if they want it.